Shadowverse soldiers, and welcome back to another video. Today we are talking about budget decks for every class, and let's go ahead and get into it. Let's go ahead and get into the Abyss version of the budget decks. So the first deck that we're going to be featuring is the vampire version of the deck. It's very cheap. This also features the new Reign of Bahamut card, so this is a set 2 budget deck list. As of right now, set 2 is out right now, so these are all the cards you can pick up as of set 2, and it only gets better when we get more sets in. So forgive me, there's not going to be a full evolved deck list because the Soul Dealer is pretty pricey and we're trying to keep it budget, guys. Alright, so the first card we're going to feature is Lilith. She features the whole point of the deck of making force bat tokens. So that's what the whole purpose is. You make force bat tokens and then you really buff up your Vania Vampire Princess, which we'll get into a little bit. But when you get the vampire token, you play her, you get a vampire token in your EX area. And then you evolve her, and then you can swing, and then you give your leader +2 defense. The mini Soul Devil is just to have some damage put on the field with the evolves, only being Vampire Noble and Lilith. But let's go ahead and talk about Vania. So Vania came out this set featuring the whole force bats, and her ability is when she comes into play, give this follower +X+X. X equals the number of force bat tokens on the field, and then you can activate for 1 play point to put a force bat token on your field into your cemetery, and you can select an enemy follower on the field and deal 3, and then their leader 1. So the whole purpose is, if you're very late into the game, is to get Queen Vampire. She comes from the starter deck. When she comes into play, you summon 2 force bat tokens, and then you can engage her to give your leader -1 and summon 2 force bat tokens. Whenever a force bat token is put onto your field, give it +1 and ward. So basically, you summon a whole bunch of bat tokens off of Summon Bloodkin, Precious Blood Fangs, all that other stuff. So you have 4. You can only have 5 people in your area. So when you have 4, and then you play Vania, she becomes a 6/6. And then you can use those bat tokens as you've swung with them, or if you have Queen Vampire, they have ward. You can just use them to ping your enemies and ping the followers down, and it's just that simple. And the whole reason it being a vampire deck is because Vampire Fortress looks at to the top 3 from your deck to reveal a vampire card, and we have tons and tons of vampire cards in here, so it'd be very, very tough. And that's not just counting followers, by the way, that's counting spells too. Anything that has vampire in its little text on the bottom left here. The only card that we're featuring in here that's not really Abysscraft and vampire is Erd, because the whole problem with this deck is that it doesn't have removal, and Erd is a pretty cheap card in cost too, and actually price wise, to remove something off the field and then remove it from the game. So that's why I like the budget version of this. Definitely could use some upgrades, and we can definitely work on that in the future. You can just start off as like $25 and you can get most of this stuff. The only other cards that don't come in the starter deck are the Rose Queen, the White Wolf, and then some other silver and bronze cards. But as we follow the feature of it being a budget deck, this is fairly cheap. I'm pretty sure you can get all of this for less than $40, honestly. So let's start off with what the deck does. So basically, you use fairy. Every Forestcraft user always has fairies. That's the whole purpose of Forestcraft. I've never seen a Forestcraft player that didn't have fairies. So let's just make it all about fairies this time. You use the fairy circle to put your tokens in your EX area, and then you also use Fairy Whisperer to help with getting like the 4th or the 5th one in there, along with a fairy that's in play, along with Water Fairy when it dies for the EX, that you get a summon a fairy token on play, and then when it dies you can summon a fairy in the EX. So that's how you summon the fairies there. But we have a full playset of Blessed Fairy Dancer. I am a personal lover of this card, because if you're just having fairies that are sitting there in your backline getting beefed up, and you're sitting there, you have a 6/6 fairy, if you manage to get that play off with all the Nature's Guidance and bouncing this back to your hand, you have like 5 6/6 fairies in the backline, and they only cost 1. The only sad part is that they have to survive that one turn that you play them. So your opponent can definitely deal with them. So that's really the main line of it. You also have a White Wolf that was one of the new SR cards that came out, and it's less than $2. But it also helps, like if you're in a very tight spot and you're at 7, imagine swinging White Wolf and then it dies, and then you hit a Rose Queen, or you can hit an Aria, which we haven't talked about Aria, forgive me. That Aria also, when it's played, you put up to 9 fairies in between the battlefield and your EX area. Very, very good for helping fill up the fairies if you haven't run into Fairy Circle, or if, you know, Blessed Fairy Dancer isn't working too much. Now let's say you're in a predicament where you don't have either of those cards. If none of them have popped up, you can definitely go for Ballad, King of the Elves. He came out this set. When he comes into play, you choose one of the following. You select a pixie following the field and give it +2/+2, which also works because, you know, you're all the fairies are in the background. They also count as pixies. And then you can also do another ability of searching your deck for a pixie follower, revealing it and adding it to your hand. So this is a pixie. That's a pixie. There's like lots of pixie followers in this deck that help you get to your fairies. So I like this as a budget deck. Please, we'll definitely work on it. Next up, we have the Haven deck. Unfortunately, it's not going to be a full grade Haven deck because Haven, if you really want to get into the depths of Haven, you want to pick up Heavenly Aegis, and that card's fairly expensive within Statute Seraph build, but we're going for the Kaguya line. So what Kaguya does is when she's played, you put an amulet on the field with a cost less than 3, and then it does X damage to where the first amulet you play does 3 damage. And then whatever amulet you play for the rest of the game, as long as Kaguya is on the field, it's going to do X amount of damage, where X is the number of the cost of the amulet. So when you evolve her, she summons an amulet that also costs 3 that says Kaguya can't be destroyed for the turn. So the play line here is that unfortunately there's not a very huge win con. If it's not the in Statute Seraphim, we'll instead be going for the Holy Sentinel, which also comes in the starter deck, which his card ability is, once each of your turns, when another amulet leaves your field, summon a Holy Tiger token and give it ward. So you're definitely going to be spamming out amulets that crack themselves, or even potentially you just heal a crazy amount, but you want to just keep control. It's basically control Kaguya. The amulets as of choice right now aren't too strong, unfortunately, since we're not going the in Statute Seraph build. But also, we are running the Moon Isle. This is a card that's a 5 cost that has Storm, and for strike you give this follower +2 defense, and at the start of your end phase give this follower +2 defense. So this becomes a really big thick girl by the end of the turn, let me tell you. We can definitely do some tweaks here. I believe the most expensive card would be Sacred Plea, which I believe you get a full playset in the starter deck. I'm not sure, forgive me if I don't remember all the way, but it's a gold card that came from set 1. That's Havencraft's like bread and butter right there. I believe that's the most expensive card in the entire deck. But this is a good template of having the Prison Priestess into the Frog Cleric into the Guardian Nun, the Priest of Cool Jewel for removal. It's basically ward and keeping yourself alive and doing Kaguya stuff by playing free amulets. And then haven't gotten to the feature of the Tribunal of Good and Evil. Not many people know about this card. When it's played, it costs 5. Forgive me that it is 5. And I'm praying that you stay alive to get that long. Select an enemy follower on the field and destroy it. You can activate to engage this amulet and put it into your cemetery and you draw a card. It's pretty good because if you have Kaguya on the field, it's going to deal something 5 damage, and everybody knows 75% of the cards in the game are less than 5, and the other 25% are game enders that are bigger than 5. So I'm praying for you if they get that far, but the whole point of the deck is to get Kaguya out, and it's pretty stable and we'll definitely work on it. Next up, we have Budget Dragons. Okay, this set was the focus of hand control. Not as far as you hand controlling your opponent, but you are discarding to deal your opponent damage. So you definitely do regular dragon things if you're new to the game. What dragons does is that it ramps very fast, so it can play things very fast. So you make sure you open with your dragon oracle to increase your play points by 1. If you're running low on cards from you discarding effects, you can also use it to draw a card. But let's go ahead and get into the new version of discard. So discard Dracomancer's Rights. At the start of your end phase, if you discarded a card this turn, select the enemy leader or an enemy follower on the field and deal it 2 damage. Fanfare, you discard a card, which, you know, you're going to either deal 2 damage to something, or you're going to deal 2 damage to their leader. 2 damage is happening when you play this card. And then at the end, you give your leader +1. So you basically use the new card, another new card, Dragon Tamer. When it comes into play, you draw a card, then discard a card. Its evo is you discard a card, and then you select a Wyrmkin follower in your cemetery and put it into your hand. As far as the Wyrmkin followers, Dragon Tamer is also a Wyrmkin follower. Let's go ahead and dig into it. We can't see the Japanese, forgive me. But there's tons of Wyrmkin followers being the dragons. It's basically made around discard. We have Demonic's Simulacrum. Forgive me if I said that word incorrectly. But this is also helps with the discard. It deals you 3 damage, but you discard a random card. And the fact that he is an entire 6/5 off of 3. He's very hard to remove very early in the game. So, and it also pings someone, your leader, their leader, or, you know, a follower for 3. The new card, Imperial Dragoon. You can evolve it for 1 to evolve this follower. It deals X damage to enemy leader, enemy follower in the field. X equals the number of cards in your hand. Then discard your hand. So let's say you have you've been using your Trail of Light that you've had before. Whenever you discard a card, you draw a card. So whenever you're doing any of these effects, like, you know, you have Dracomancer's Rights, you pitch Trail of Light, you draw a card, you keep your hand size still healthy, and you're still dealing them damage. So it's still doing a little bit of dragon things, along with, you know, cheating out the fact that you don't have to get rid of your hand. Let's go ahead and get into the evolve for the Imperial Dragoon. So after you discard your hand for Imperial Dragoon, which, you know, does hurt because you lose your hand, if you evo, he's a 7th heaven and you draw 3 cards. So you lose 1 from starting hand, but if you're like really late in the game and you ping someone for like 5, and they're gonna take 2 because of Dracomancer's Rights also proccing with Imperial Dragoon. So you're pinging them for a lot through burn damage through this deck. And that's what I like about dragons this set, is because it's not really focused on doing damage like it did in set 1 with Forte, which people still run Forte. And, you know, we're gonna keep it budget because Forte is a $14 card, unfortunately, but very pretty cards. But that's the whole main basis of the deck of Dracomancer's Rights and the Imperial Dragoon, and we'll definitely work on it. Next up, we have Budget Rune. Unfortunately, to tell you that you are going to be focusing on 2 cards this entire thing without Merlin, so it's very rough if you have a budget. But, you know, if you're very not sure if you want to get into the game or not, and you see that Runecraft is something you'd be interested in, I'd say pick it up. I mean, Isabella is definitely a beautiful card. I love her as a leader. I prefer that over the Merlin card. I've always used Isabel in the digital game, and I enjoyed it so much. But let's go ahead and get into it. Sorry for trailing off. You're gonna be focusing on Rudeblade Summoner. Alright, when this comes into play, if you have spell chain 5, if there are 5 spells in your cemetery, you give this follower +4/+4. And if it's spell chain 10, you give this follower Storm. So you are going to have a 5/5 swinging at you the same turn as played. That's not traditional Shadowverse, because you have to wait because things have summoning sickness, but when they have Storm, they swing immediately. So the whole purpose is to use the Penguin Wizard. If you don't know it, you switch him into rest mode, and you discard a spell card, and then you draw a card. But with the new card, you can definitely do a turbo of the spells with the new Craig card, which says on Fairfair, when he's played, he costs 2. You draw a card and then you discard a card. So all these spells that you're doing Let's say that I don't need to use Wind Blast right now. I'm gonna put Wind Blast into the cemetery, and then I'm gonna draw a card. Simple as that. There's also a card from set 1. It will help with the budgeting. It's not as good as other cards, but on Fair, you select an enemy following the field and deal a 2 damage. If you have Spell Chain 5, deal 4. If you have Spell Chain 10, you deal 2 damage to that follower's leader. It's a pretty nice card, but the boss monster of this deck will be Mithram Golem, because the thing about Runecraft is, even though you do play like little things like Craig and Penguin Wizard, there's 9 times out of 10 they're gonna fill the board way faster than you are. So the whole goal is to get at least 7 spell chain for this card, and let me read it to you. When it comes into play, you deal 3 damage to each enemy follower on the field. If you have spell chain 7, deal 5, which is 75% of the cards in the game. And then if you have spell chain 15, it doesn't happen all the time, but you know, if you have spell chain 15, it does come in clutch. You deal 5 damage to each enemy leader. So it's kind of one of those burn effects. So basically, the whole game plan is to get your Rune Blades out and make sure that they swing for 5. And then if you get that far into Mithram Golem, it's just keep clearing the board, make sure that they don't have a board. Deal 5 this is 5 to them to the face if you have 15. This is 5 to the face if you have at least 10. And you just keep cycling your cards out by using Penguin Wizard or Craig, or even using your spell chain to just keep them from hitting you with like big things. I haven't talked about the new card, Multi-Part Experiment. You choose up to 2 of the following effects. Spell chain 10, you can choose up to 3 instead. You select an enemy following the field and deal it 3 damage. You summon a guard form golem token, and you can draw a card. So if you have spell chain 10, you can do all 3 of those. And then if you don't, you just choose to. Not many people use this, but this is a very good budget card if you don't have access to Mithril Golem, which still isn't too expensive because you can get it out of the starter deck for like 25 bucks. The Alchemical Lore, you use it and you deal 4 damage to each enemy following the field, which also paired up with like Fire Chain that deals up to 3 to 2 different followers also works. With the also new card with Rhyme Wind. It's a quick spell, and you select an unevolved follower on the field and return it to its owner's hand. And if spell chain 10, you put it on top of their deck instead. So when they draw for the next turn, they already know what they're going to draw. But this is the Runecraft deck. It's very, very rough out of all the other crafts for budget. But I mean, it's budget. If you like, I want you to love the game, and I enjoy the game so far too. So please look into getting better upgrades for the cards, and yeah, we'll work on it. Alright, and lastly, we have budget swordcraft. How I want to look at sword is definitely some aggro. You basically play little bodies that will do little bits of damage, but eventually when you get into those bigger turns, your bodies get bigger. With the new card Leonidas, here we go. He's a 6-drop, and you evolve him for 1. And on evolve, you select an enemy following the field and deal a 5 damage. And then when he dies, you summon a Leonidas' Resolve token. So Leonidas' Resolve is whenever a Swordcraft follower is put onto your field, give it +3/+3 and Rush. So if you basically have a follower that has Storm like Quickblader, that is a 4/4. He's a permanent 4/4, and he has Storm and Rush, which doesn't matter, I guess, for Quickblader because he already has Storm and he can swing at anything. But he's a 4/4 swinging at you. But that's the hard thing about Swordcraft, is you have to get all the way to 6. But we have other things that come out of the starter deck, like Floor Fencer. And on Floor Fencer's Evolve, you summon a Steelclad Knight and a Knight token. That's usually the hardest thing about Swordcraft, going against Swordcraft, is keeping its board clear. Because as long as Floor Fencer's a thing, you're going to have 3 bodies off of evolving from 1. And also with a new card, let's see where she is, Amelia Silver Paladin. When you play her, you can choose one of the following. You can select the follower that costs 3 points or less in your hand and put it onto the field. Or you can select the enemy follower in the field and deal 4 damage. So she has flexibility in the 2 things. So basically, you want to play her, and then you want to play Floor Fencer. And if you go second, you can use one of your Evo points to play Floral Fencer Evolved. And that's 4 bodies right there off of just playing Amelia for 4. So you get the 4 for 4, and we're not talking about Wendy's. But, you know, it's just things that you start off with, things low to the ground and go up, and they're like small little upgrades. We have Luminous Knight that came out, I believe, in this set. I'm not sure. I'm not a huge Swordcraft player, so please forgive me. You have Luminous Knight. It came out. Select an enemy, follow on the field, and give it +1 attack. And then when she dies, you go follow on your field and give it another 1 attack. I know Samurai came out in this set. It's very costly, but I like what it does. You play for 2, and you can activate for 3 play points the next turn and give the follower Storm or Bane. The Bane is very important because Sword doesn't have very much removal. I definitely put in a spell card of Onslaught to help with the removal. You can select an enemy following the field and deal a 5 damage, and put a Knight token in your EX area. It helps with the removal. But Swordcraft has a very hard time removing things, and that is really what it is. Most of the other things are already in the starter deck, besides Leonidas and the Samurais, because they come out of the most recent set. The Tsubaki's come in the starter deck, and if you don't know what she does, she comes into play. You choose one of the following effects, and you select the enemy followed on the field and destroy it. Or 2, you can give this follower Storm, and she swings with 5. So basically, if they go to 5 and they don't have any play points open, and you have 6, you can definitely play Tsubaki and just end the game. But that's basically Swordcraft. You basically play these low bodies, and then you get into like higher bodies that cause a problem. As soon as you get to 4, you're probably at a huge spike with Amelia into Floral Fencer. If you're on 5, you can play the extra evolve point to play her to play extra tokens. But you have small bodies that go into big ones, and that's pretty much it. Alright folks, and that is the end of the video. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Please check out the Shadowverse Evolve TCG website. Make sure you brush up on some information on better upgrades for cards. We enjoyed having you here today. And please make sure you're safe in whatever you're doing for the rest of the day and the rest of the year. I love you guys so much. Take care. Bye.
I gave you all my love, baby, my heart is cold when you're around. You warm it up, liquid gold, baby, yeah, you warm it up, liquid gold, baby. And my affection, all that paper you wasted, take my love and turn it to hatred. That's a swarming, not mistaken, that liquid gold you've been making.